Hey y'all, it's Amy. Welcome back to Called to Be Different, Reflecting Christ. I'm tired, honestly. I wake up in the morning and there's always a Protestant that has bad theology. I go to bed at night, I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and I read a comment and it's bad theology. And listen, I'm not a genius. I'm not. But what really irks me about so many Protestants is that they will cherry pick the Bible and that they will pick and choose what verses make them happy. And I literally just did a short yesterday talking about works-based salvation and what does that mean and why do Catholics believe in this kind of idea. And it's because we believe that even though God saves us by his grace through the faith of us accepting that grace, that God still calls us to do works. And so we can't pretend like works are not a part of us being a Christian. They are most definitely a part of us being Christian. And so this person reached out and said Ephesians 2, 8 and 9. And I knew that this was coming. I knew it, but I want to read Ephesians 2, 8 and 9. But I also want to add in verse 10 because this is the verse that they leave out. And this is why so many Protestants are sketchy and we need to watch out for them. They don't mean to do this. I know that because I was one. They just are taught this, and this is how they view the Bible. And unfortunately, it just is hurtful to people who are seeking to understand more and who are being taught wrongly. So let's talk about this. It says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith. It is not your own doing. It is a gift of God." What's a gift from God? The grace. And how did you accept that grace? By having faith. What is faith? Believing, trusting, or accepting. So we accept the free gift of grace that God has given us. Now, verse 9, "Not because of works, lest any man should boast." So what's not the work? Oh, wait, we didn't work for the grace. It was just given to us, so we can't boast. All right, now let's read verse 10. "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works." For what? For good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So this is what I'm talking about. You want to read 8 and 9. You want to say, oh, well, it's not because of any works. You're right. You are so right. The gift of God's grace is nothing I could have worked for. Nothing I could have attained on my own. It had to be given to me by God himself, and it had to be given freely because no amount of effort could persuade God that what I did was good enough to gain that grace. Grace is far exceeds anything that I would ever be able to give God. But don't stop at those verses and just say all works are crap and so let's throw them out the window, because the very following verse says that we were created for good works. So we do not stop there. We continue after we accept God's grace, then we continue to cooperate with that grace. What does cooperating with grace mean? It means that we walk in the good works that God has prepared for us. And what are the good works that he has prepared for us? Well, he taught us. He taught us all the good works that were prepared from the very beginning when he initially created us. When he initially created Adam and Eve, he had good works for us. He told us to do certain things. It wasn't until after Adam and Eve sinned that then the fall of man happened, and good works were something that are still on the table. We're still able to work good for God and do the Father's will, because that is what ultimately a good work is us doing God's will. Now, I know Protestants will say, well, Jesus says that he will not lose any that the Father gives him because this is the Father's will. This is true. Jesus is not going to lose us, but I think what would be more helpful for us to understand is the parable of the prodigal son. So I want to just kind of cliff note it real quick and recap it because I think it is very helpful in understanding why Jesus says that he cannot lose any of us, that the Father wills him to not lose any of us, and how we can actually still walk away from him. So let's think about the prodigal son. So the prodigal son was with his dad, and he lived with his dad. He was under the protection of his dad. He had money out the ears. He literally had everything he wanted. He always had meals on the table. And then what does this son do? He says, I want to do it all by myself, Dad. I don't want your help anymore. Give me my inheritance. I'm leaving. And so the son takes his inheritance and he leaves. And then he goes and he squanders it and he wastes all of his inheritance. And he realizes that he is in trouble, okay? As we'd say in the South, he's up blank creek without a paddle. Okay, so he needs to figure it out. And this is what happens. He gets so desperate that he's literally willing to eat food with the pig's food. And so he realizes this ain't working and I'm in trouble and I gotta go home. I have to humble myself and go back to my father. And so that's what he does. And he expects that maybe his father's gonna be mad, maybe his dad's not gonna accept him. But what happens? The complete opposite. His dad's waiting with open arms. He runs out to greet him. He's so excited that his son is home. He tells the servants, kill the best calf that we have and we're gonna have a feast. We're gonna throw a party because my son is back. He's back under my protection, and I have never stopped loving him. This is the biggest understanding of the prodigal son, is that the father has never left the son. It was the son that walked away from the father. So just like Jesus and just like him never walking away from us, he's always there to bestow that grace upon us. He's always there, but we have to actively cooperate with that grace. If we walk away from that grace, if we leave, then we are outside of God's grace. So we can always come back. That's all that this means. And I think that Protestants just want to say that once you're saved, you're always saved. And this is very unbiblical. It is very sketchy to say that. It's very I have literally seen people in my life who think that this is exactly what that means, and so that they can keep on being terrible sinners because God's got it by God's grace and through faith, and that's all I need. But that's not true. That is not true. You actually have to actively walk in the good works that God prepared for you. So I just wanted to talk about that. I know that people will see in the Gospels where Jesus saves people and he says, "It is your faith that saved you. It is your faith that saved you." So here's the thing. Again, faith is actively trusting in God's grace. And when God is talking about faith, he means that we are believing in him, right? We're believing in him. And so when people are being saved, it's because Jesus is literally telling them, it's because you believed in me and that the fact that I could do this, that it has been done to you. Now, does that mean that God can't save people outside or people who aren't willing to believe? No, that's not true. But in order for God to love us wholly and completely, it's a relationship. It's not one person forcing themselves on somebody else. So we have to work with God. We have to want to be in relationship with Jesus and actively come to him. And our part is to have the faith, and his part is to give the grace. But we can't boast about any of that. But we will walk in works with him because we love him and we want to do everything that he commands us to do. Does that mean it's going to be easy? Does that mean we're just going to walk out there and we're just going to do good works? As Protestants will say, no. That is why we actively have to continue. And that is why when Jesus sent people away that had faith, he said, go and sin no more. Because he understood that there's a possibility that they could continue sinning. And I think one of the biggest things that comes to my mind is that Jesus is the bread of life discourse. So in John, Jesus is literally teaching that he's the bread of life and people need to come to him and eat of him in order to have that life. And it says that this teaching was hard, and so the disciples walked away. Now, not the apostles. They were his disciples too, but the apostles are the 12 that he chose. But he had many disciples that actually followed him, that were believing in him and trusting in him and had faith in him and his teachings. But during this discourse of him telling them, hey, you got to eat my flesh and drink my blood or you have no life, these disciples, the ones that were trusting in him, they thought it was too hard or too hard of a teaching, and so they walked away from Jesus. So this would be just like the prodigal son leaving. This would just be like us walking away. When we choose to stop cooperating with God's grace, then we can put ourselves outside of that grace. Does that mean that Jesus kicked us out? No, Jesus will never kick us out. He always will be just like the Father with open arms, waiting for us to come home. But he is not going to be the one that kicks us out. Just like the prodigal son, the dad never told him to leave. It was the son's choice. And just like us, we have that opportunity. We could freely walk away from God if we want to, and people do that, and Protestants will say, well, if you walked away from God, you were never a Christian, and that is just not true. We can be a Christian, and then we can walk away from God and still have the opportunity to come home. So if you've ever been a Christian and somebody has told you this nonsense, so you have heard it, that once you walk away, you're out, that is just baloney, okay? God is always waiting with open arms to accept you back into his family. He has never kicked you out, and he has always wanted you home. So I hope that encourages you guys today to dig a little bit deeper, but I have come to the realization that I cannot be your babysitter through the Bible. I wanted to start this channel and really help people see what I have seen, and I'm hoping that by my videos I'm doing that, because I can't continue to do these long debates in the comments section, because a lot of them are just unfruitful. A lot of them just really don't help. So I'm praying that my videos will be more helpful, because usually the people that are in the comment section are pretty stuck in their ways, and they're not going to see it any other way, and that's sad, because I really think that we have to continuously humble ourselves before the Lord and say, am I missing something, or what's going on, or please teach me, please help me. And I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I think the majority of people who are commenting probably have their own set of ideas, and they're pretty stuck in it. But thank you for everyone who does take the time, who is Catholic, who will see maybe somebody come in and give really bad theology, and for just stepping in and commenting back. I truly appreciate that, because honestly, it brings a smile to my face to see that we're working together to spread the truth and the true message of the Gospels. And I'm very grateful for that, because I can't do it all on my own. I just can't. I don't honestly have enough time, energy, or patience for that. So thank you for everyone who helps me out there. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.